Welcome to Prediabetes and the Path to Better A1C podcast. I am your host, Jenny Pena. I am National Board Certified Health and Wellness Coach, Diabetes Prevention Program Lifestyle Coach, founder of GenP Coaching, and creator of the A1C Reset Protocol. My 12-week private coaching program designed specifically to help you balance your blood sugar, lower your A1C, prevent type 2 diabetes, manage the cravings, and ditch that brain fog that comes all without having to give up carbs or getting into any extreme diets. Now, I get asked all the time, what is the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes? What even is prediabetes? Why should I care? And then people start hearing this term that has been thrown around about type 3 diabetes. So today we're covering all four terms and we're going to get into this type 3 that is one of the most fascinating and honestly a bit alarming at the same time that I have come across. So stick around because this one is going to connect all of this and is going to show also the deep connection between blood sugar balance and brain health. That's why if you're having blood sugar imbalances, you are experiencing lack of focus and moodiness and feeling foggy. And at the time that I'm recording this podcast is in May, I am doing a lot of content relating and explaining the connection between mental health and your blood sugar and how all of that is connected. So let's get into it. Let's start with type 1. I want to lead with this because it is probably the most misunderstood type. And also, next week, I am having a guest speaker that has type 1 diabetes, and she is going to speak about that. So consider this a bit of a prequel. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease. That means that the immune system, your body's defense system, basically is making a mistake and it's starting to attack the insulin producing cells in the pancreas. So those cells are called beta cells. And once they're destroyed, they're gone. It can't be restored or anything like that. They are gone. So the body can no longer make insulin on its own. And insulin, just to be clear, it's not optional. It is a hormone that lets your cells absorb glucose from your bloodstream to turn them into energy. Now, without it, the blood sugar is just going to build up to dangerous levels in your body. And people with type 1, they need insulin every single day, either through injections or a pump. They just need it to stay alive. Now, this can show up at any age, but it seems to be commonly diagnosed young adults and children, right? It's very early in age that these diagnoses are identified. And in the US alone, there's over 300,000 kids and teens under 20 that are living with type 1 diabetes. So this is important for us to understand. Now, here is the thing I really want you to hear. Type 1 is not caused by any diet. It is not caused by eating too much sugar. It is an immune system malfunction. That misconception causes real harm to people who are already dealing with a serious lifelong condition. Now, the good news is research is moving fast. There was an incredible case in 2024 where a young woman in China with type 1 diabetes achieved insulin independence after stem cell therapy. Again, I'm not a doctor. This is just for information only, but that's not a cure. But it's kind of those breakthroughs that gives you hope, right? Not something that necessarily is terminal, but something that gives you hope. And that is pretty much type 1 diabetes. Now, look forward to next week's episode where I'm going to have a guest podcast episode that she's going to talk a little bit and shed more light on type 1. Now, prediabetes, which is what I specialize, is my passion. I clearly can relate. I had prediabetes and reversed it. And it's a territory that is just very close to home. So prediabetes is when your blood sugar levels are higher than normal, but are not yet high enough to be classified as type 2 diabetes. But it's already showing signs that insulin resistance is developing, that your body is having a bit of difficulty processing the blood sugar levels and keeping them at a adequate level. And think of it as a yellow light. The car isn't crashed yet, but if you don't slow down, you may have some problems later. That's how I like to explain it. Now, here's the stat that honestly blows my mind every time I say it, and that is that 98 million American adults have prediabetes. That's about 1 in 3 Americans. And out of all of those, more than 80% have no clue. So if there is anything that you take out of this episode, please monitor your A1C levels. Take a look at your fasting glucose when you go to your doctor every year. And if you don't have that, ask for it, monitor it, see if you're having constant cravings. I have covered this in so many ways, but be aware, be mindful, not scared, but aware. Now, the sad part is that some, if they are not aware of these things, and if you don't do anything and continue with certain habits that are just feeding that insulin resistance, within a few years, you end up having type 2 diabetes, which becomes a bit more complex. It comes with more complications. There's a lot more risks. So it's great to identify these things early so that you can reverse it with simple, sustainable habits, lifestyle habits, and not wait until you are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes or have to deal with all of the other complications that come with it. Now, it is not just adults anymore. Recent data is also showing that nearly 1 in 3 American teenagers are starting to have prediabetes or early type 2. And as a coach that specializes in that, I'm seeing more and more young men and women in their 30s being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and sometimes fatty liver disease and other complications that are all from insulin resistance. So, just to be aware. And this is what is happening right now. But I want to give you some hope. It's not a death sentence. Prediabetes is reversible. There is solid research. CDC has tons of data. They collect all this data from everybody that is part of the Diabetes Prevention Program, which is a national program, a year long. I have facilitated the program twice already. You see amazing results, and the research is there. Moving more, eating better, losing even a modest amount of weight if you are overweight can cut your risk of progressing to type 2 diabetes by 58%. That's more than half. And again, the diabetes prevention program, it has shows it over and over. They keep the data and they can validate that making these shifts that are very simple shifts, they've really proved to generate results. Okay? Now, let's talk about type 2 diabetes. Type 2 is the most common form of diabetes. It accounts about 90% of the cases worldwide, right? With type 2, the body still produces insulin, but it's either not producing enough or the body's cells have become resistant to it. Think of it as a key and a lock. I love to use that analogy. Insulin is a key and your cells are the locks. With insulin resistance, the locks get jammed. The key is there, but it can't turn. So glucose stays stuck in the bloodstream instead of getting into your cells where it's actually needed. Now, over time, the pancreas can get exhausted from trying to produce more and more insulin to compensate, and eventually it just can't keep up. And that's when blood sugar spirals. Risk factors to take in consideration that can make it more likely for you to develop type 2 diabetes can be being overweight, your diet. What type of foods are you incorporating? Are you incorporating balanced diet with fruits and vegetables and fiber and protein? Are you very sedentary? Your family history, there is a genetic component to it. Your age, even certain ethnic backgrounds, they have more of a higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And unlike type 1 that we talked about before, lifestyle absolutely plays a role in here. With type 1, you need the insulin. Your body cannot produce it. It has nothing to do with your lifestyle. But with type 2, there is a lot that you can incorporate in terms of lifestyle, and it can be part of the solution. So I want you to know, if you hear type 2 diabetes, it doesn't mean give me the medication and I don't have to do anything. Incorporating lifestyle habits can increase the chances of you tapering off the medication, lowering that A1C, and put that type 2 diabetes in remission. The management of this illness, it looks different for everyone. Some people manage with diet and exercise alone. Others need oral medications like metformin. And increasingly, doctors are using GLP-1s, which I have a series, a four-part series. And this medication initially was used mainly for blood sugar imbalances. Now, a lot of people are using it for cardiovascular health and weight loss, right? So you have probably heard about it. Ozempic and Wegovy and Zepbound, all of these, they have been game changing for a lot of people. Now, lately, there's an oral version of these medications, and they're showing promising results, but they're fairly new. Just to be on the lookout that a lot of these are fairly new. But the cost is still a barrier for a lot of people. Like the GLP-1s are fairly expensive, and if you don't manage to get them by the insurance, the average is about $1,000 a month, just to give you an idea of what it is. But that's a space that is evolving, and things are changing in terms of the GLP-1 medications and how they are available to the public. Now, let's talk about this topic that is fascinating to me, and it has a lot to do with the brain connection. And I feel that it's an amazing thing to talk about now that it's Mental Health Month, and we're thinking about stress and energy and brain fog. And a lot of you have reached out to me to ask about that. How can I improve my energy and my focus? And here's this type 3 diabetes now that people are talking about. And I want to be upfront. This is not yet an official diagnosis. It's not official. It's just something that people are loosely referring to. And I wanted to bring it up so that you're aware. You're not going to find it in a standard diagnostic book, but it is a concept that is gaining serious traction in the research world. And I think it's important enough that we need to talk about it. Now, here's the core idea. Researchers have discovered that the brain needs insulin too. Just like your muscles and organs need insulin to use glucose for energy, your brain cells, your neurons, also depend on insulin signaling to function properly. Now, type 3 diabetes is a term some scientists are using to describe what happens when your brain itself becomes insulin resistant. When your neurons stop responding to insulin, it leads to inflammation, cell death, and disrupted communication between the brain cells. And that is starting to look a lot like what we see in Alzheimer's disease. In fact, some researchers have gone as far as calling Alzheimer's diabetes of the brain. And the connection is still being studied, is still being debated. Scientists aren't completely sure yet whether insulin resistance is what causes the brain damage or whether it shows up as a result of it, but the overlap is striking enough that it has become a major area of research, right? So there's a lot of research being done right now. Now, what does this mean to you? You must be like, okay, Jenny, why are you bringing this up? Well, it's one more reason why managing your blood sugar isn't just about your waistline, it's not just about your energy levels, and it's not something that you need to be concerned about when you get a diagnosis. It might be about protecting your brain for the long run, and you're not going to know about the effects until later. So why not be proactive and protect your brain now? There is also the gut brain connection that is coming up on the research that has been completed and the idea that what's happening in your digestive system can influence what is happening in your brain and vice versa. So I may end up dedicating an episode on type 3 diabetes and the concept and the research soon. I just want to give you a baseline so that it can get you thinking. And I want you to hear this the same insulin resistance that drives prediabetes and type 2 may be connected to cognitive decline. That's a big deal. So now it is not just about type 2 diabetes. Blood sugar is not just about preventing diabetes. Now it is something to be concerned about if you want to preserve your energy, if you want to have your mental focus. That's why it impacts mood and a lot of other things. So, as a recap, type 1 is not tied to lifestyle habits. Prediabetes is that yellow flag, that warning sign, that light on the indicator of your car saying something is wrong. You need to fix it soon before it turns into type 2 diabetes, which is elevated levels of A1C and blood sugar in your body that may need medication. And some people, when they have advanced type 2 diabetes, they need to get an insulin as well. And then we have type 3, that is something that it's still referred to loosely and it impacts your brain and your cognitive health. There is an episode that I recorded with a neuroscientist that she talked a lot about brain health and how to support your brain. That I will put the reference in the description of the episode so that you can take a listen because we talked a lot about blood sugar in the brain. It is truly connected. So, 4 types of conditions and scenarios, 4 different stories, but with a common thread running through them: insulin, insulin resistance, blood sugar imbalance. So now you have an idea as to how it works, how it stops working, what is happening, and now you know the difference. Plus, how type 3 can be something to be concerned. So, if there is one thing that I want you to walk away with today, is this: please know your numbers. Get your fasting glucose checked. It should be less than 100. Get your A1C checked. It should be less than 5.7. Because the majority that have prediabetes, they have no clue because they don't know their numbers. Even if it is borderline, even if it is just a point. I just got a message 2 days ago, one of my email subscribers saying that they have had their levels at 6 points, their A1C levels for 2 years. And the doctor said not to worry about it. And that is already prediabetes range. No lifestyle habits, nothing. And I was a bit in shock. So be aware, look at these numbers. We love doctors, but sometimes they're super busy. They have a lot of people that they need to see. They don't have as much time. That's why I get a lot of clients. A lot of clients, they get the diagnosis from the doctor and then they're having all of these takeaways and all these things that they need to incorporate. And I help them translate that into actionable steps that fit their lives. That's what I do in my coaching practice. So if this episode was helpful, share with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a review if you haven't yet. It genuinely helps more people find the show. And if you have any questions, topics you want me to cover, drop them in the comments or reach out. Thank you so much for listening. And also remember that I have a guide. If you have just been diagnosed with prediabetes, you don't know where to start, you don't know what's happening, I have a free guide. It's called the Prediabetes Roadmap Guide that will explain a lot of things, explain what is happening in your body, what are the questions you need to ask your doctor. It has a checklist that you can follow through, and it has 3 simple habits that you can start with and help your body find that blood sugar balance. Thank you so much. And until the next one, bye.